Ready to go live. Well, greetings everyone who is tuning in, all of our dear two listeners that listen to our episodes. We are here at the official end of this podcast season for us here on You'll Never Talk Alone. We have obviously the season itself ended a little bit back, and we're already knee deep into Euros and other competitions. The U.S. already, did the thing in the CONCACAF. I'm drawing a blank on what that tournament was even
The
called now.
Nations League.
Nations League, there it is. So there's already so much going on, but this is the episode that always marks the end of the season in our podcast schedule, because this is our annual Keep or Sell episode here on You'll Never Talk Alone. I'm your friend Joseph Craven. I've got Alex Level with me. Alex, I've already decided that out of the two of us, I'm keeping you, but going to go ahead and move me along. I'm past my prime, and I think I just need to be sold while I still have some sort of value to me.
Yeah, it was always been your dream to have a career as a Liverpool podcaster and then see out the end of your career in podcasting as a Brighton podcaster. So
Right.
I imagine you'll follow the Adam Lallana path.
Yeah, exactly. It's my childhood club, Brighton. It means I wasn't good enough to go and retire, quote unquote, in the MLS. Like most of the top tier footballers in the world do. So, oh well, here I am. Well, if you're unfamiliar with this episode, what we do is we run through the roster as a whole. We go through the players that are around, the players that we need to talk about, and decide, which ones are the ones that obviously need to be kept, which ones are the ones that need to be moved along, or what sort of variations we might, throw in there. And we had some, last year, obviously we had coming off a Premier League title. It's like you don't really want to sell anybody, right? You kind of want to keep everyone and just try to add on. It's always whenever you've had a few little issues, a few little hiccups, that you start to think about making some changes. And so there's going to be a lot of players to kind of discuss around here of like, okay, like how necessary are they to the future of things, the future of this continued rebuild of sorts, just the continued growth and development of the team as it is right now. With that, there will always be a few exceptions. Obviously, you have some players that we just don't even discuss. We just consider they're automatic. Yes, absolutely. And then you have several players that are obviously on the roster, but are youth players or have various, other things going. If you see that someone's like 17, it's like we're not really to discuss that. They don't. Doesn't matter what we do with them right now. So there's always a few exceptions, but we'll explain those rules as they appear and as we go along. And so, Alex, I think that the first thing that we need to discuss is, I think the first player that we need to decide keep or sell is Gini Wijnaldum.
I think we should keep him.
Oh, interesting. Bold take. No, we do need to say goodbye to Gini Wijnaldum, who has officially moved along, as heartbreaking as it is, but is going away as a Liverpool legend, which I think is a very, very special thing. Alex, his legacy, you think, as he leaves the club?
Like you said, he's a legend. We wouldn't be where we are today, not just third after this season, but back amongst the elite in world football without him. He was one of the first signings, really, that Klopp made, and he did everything he could for the team. And so much so that he is a totally different player for Liverpool than he is for any team he's played for in the past. And while that might not mean that we see maybe his best, you don't see him dominate games like you would see him do for the Netherlands or when he was at Newcastle or PSV or something like that. You see him do a completely necessary role that set the platform for some of our best performances of the past decade, really. And he scored massive goals. He was always around the team. He's probably the first name on the team sheet. He was just a part of what makes why he played all the time. There's a reason why Klopp trusts him so much, because he would just do whatever was needed. And it's going to be really sad to see him go. I know there are times on this pod where we were kind of critical of him, but I think that's only because, one, we were a little frustrated to see him have to be so restrained because we know what he's so capable of. But I mean, I think we're all going to miss him, and we wish him well at PSG, and just hope that he doesn't score on us if we ever play them.
Yeah, we wish him well, but we don't wish him too well. You know, we really want it to go down that his best years were here as a Red. No, you're absolutely right. It speaks to his quality as a player and his importance as a player. That, yeah, exactly what you're just talking about. We did not always see him at his most dynamic. You know, maybe not like his quote unquote best performances or whatever it is, but definitely not his most dynamic, game-changing types of play styles, performances, as we, got used to seeing. We always made the joke about the difference between Club Genie and Dutch Genie, and we didn't always get to see that dynamic style, but we saw his importance on a, week in, week out basis, every match that he was involved in. Especially the home matches, for whatever reason, he's shown he was an integral part. And, it speaks to kind of the excitement and like the importance of who he was as a player for us. Also, I mean, just the fact that you bought his kit immediately. And I always thought it was so funny that you just knew that he was going to be worth it. He was going to be a big deal. He was going to be an integral part of the success of the team and what Klopp was trying to build. And it just was really, I think we saw all of that. We saw the importance, and it's going to be difficult to replace that. It's going to be difficult. I think that we've kind of started to reach a point in which we feel like we have a little bit more, not depth. I don't think we will ever reach a point in which we feel comfortable with the depth that we have.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's in our DNA as Liverpool fans, but we definitely feel a little bit better with maybe the direction we're trying to take with the midfield, especially if some of the rumors about possible transfers might come true, that sort of thing. We'll see what the summer actually holds, but it still is going to be difficult to replace him specifically. What he brings, but also just who he is. Like, he's a personality that people really like. He's got that infectious smile that you just absolutely love. Whenever he grins, the genie grin is just, it's just a part of who he is, and it's just so wonderful. So, so it's difficult to replace him, but we do wish him the best. In all seriousness, we do wish him the best, and a bright future, and maybe a chance to get back to. You always kind of wonder if maybe the role he took on with Liverpool while he was excelled at it, while he's so good at it, if it just was a little more unnatural for him, and he would have preferred to go somewhere where he's going to play a little bit more naturally what he's geared towards. And I think that might be the situation he's got. So we'll see. Finally gives me a reason to actually tune into PSG matches, though.
Yeah.
Never had much of a desire before now. So, I think we will start off the actual keep or sell discussion in probably the most natural spot to start with, the easiest spot to start with, the goalkeeper position. This is a situation here in which we have fairly clear-cut answers around the around everything. I mean, obviously, Alisson is one of our no question keep this player, keep the keeper, which is not something. It's not a luxury we'd able to have in the years that we've been doing this podcast. So that's pretty great. But we have him as a no question one, and then the club, of course, has extended Adrian as a veteran backup choice. So the question around him really becomes more so like not so much would you keep him or would you sell him, but like, do you agree with that decision, especially in light of what we saw out of Kavim Keller the times that he played this past season? Alex, what's your take on the contract extension with Adrian?
It very much seems driven by non-playing factors. I mean, there was, when it was called out that he got an extension, there was a lot of mention that he's a very popular figure in the dressing room. On all the club videos, you kind of see him goofing around with people all the time. He seems like a really nice person. He seems like he's really fun. He seems like the Alberto Moreno replacement of just the weird, goofy Spaniard that we have in our squad.
Yeah, or almost kind of a bit of a Lucas Leiva. Like everyone just loves having him around, and even if he's not really playing much, we kind of like his presence, type of like locker room personality as well.
Yeah, exactly. So I think he will be there to kind of guide some of the younger keepers through, maybe give Kavim Keller some advice. I don't know, but it seems like he's there just to be a veteran presence, and we've seen it before. I mean, we brought in Alex Manager for a season. We brought in Andy Lonergan for a season. It seems like we just like to have kind of older, experienced third choice goalkeepers lying around, just kind of collecting dust and needing to like, should I sell that? No, I think I'll just keep it.
Nah, it's kind of got some like sentimental value now, and I kind of feel like maybe we need to keep it around. I don't know.
Yeah, so exactly for those reasons is I think why we gave him that extension.
Yeah, it's one of those, like, I agree with it. I'm fine with it. It's not like it's breaking the bank for any reason. And the goalkeeper position is a position where you really badly need to have at least a veteran around. You just do. And Alisson is obviously like the first choice and, one of the best in the world, no question. And like he's coming off of, at not his best season, especially for Liverpool, and it still was a really good season. Yeah. So it's like, even if we do believe, and I feel like you and I both believe that Kavim is the second choice. I don't think either of us would argue with that, which also means that Kavim Kelleher is an automatic, don't have to discuss, he's a keep, But even if we think he is the second, you just always want to have someone with that much experience that Adrian has, because, Alisson is kind of just, as far as goalkeeper ages go, like he's really just getting to his prime as a player. You don't expect to really hit your prime as a keeper until you get into your late 20s and, up to about 30 and so. So Adrian as a mentor type figure and just as good, like a good locker room presence is, it's good. So I agree with it. All three of the keepers, easy to talk about there in a keep or sell situation, because you keep the keepers at this point. There's no real reason. Do you see a need to make any other moves, though, like to try to add another player, or is this an okay situation where we feel confident with Kavim as a second choice in case in case Alisson misses time due to injury or something?
I think we're set. I mean, we've got 50 youth goalkeepers, 48 of them are Polish and giant. So I feel like we're set in that department, and that is probably part of the reason why Adrian's there, is just try to help them transition to being counted on a little bit more. And I mean, if needed, we've got an order of succession, but the only moves I would really see us making are loaning out one or more of those keepers that are knocking around, that are about 18 to 20, around that age, ready to go get some experience somewhere.
We have, from what I can tell, 40 keepers on. So yeah, it's could always use some sort of experience there, but it seems like we're actually in a pretty decent position with the goalkeeping group, which is so strange. Which then, of course, brings us to the defense. And this is where things can get a little bit more iffy here, a little bit more unclear. Obviously, you have Virgil van Dijk, and that's a no discussion keeper. But once you get to some of the other center backs in particular, you get to Joe Gomez, you get to Joel Matip, you get to not Nat Phillips. He's almost like a no question.
Yeah.
But you get to some of the center backs that are more injury prone, and you start to wonder, okay, with new guy who I just drew a blank on his name all of a sudden. Yeah, Konate, thank you. With Konate coming in, do we make moves with some of these guys, with Gomez or Matip, to maybe say, okay, Konate, while I think he is a little bit, some reports say he's a little injury prone as well, correct?
No, I would say that he is not injury prone. He just had an injury that lasted a long time this past season. But before that, like, he hadn't really had any issues.
Yeah, gotcha. So you got the questions there about like Gomez and Matip about whether they might be getting replaced with Konate. One of them might be. You have questions with like, okay, we did make moves with Ben Davies, and we've tried to really rely on Reece Williams. Are either of those guys ever going to be reliable? Do we know anything? Like, there's a lot of weirdness with the center backs in particular. So that's where I want to start, because I feel like it's safe to assume left back, right back, we both agree, no question, right?
Oh, so you changed your tune from last year, didn't you?
No, that was a hypothetical question. That was a hypothetical. If I were to sell a first teamer, who would, that was a purely hypothetical if I had to, which I didn't. I'm glad I didn't, because I went back on my word later on.
Editor put the clip right here of him saying it.
That's me. I don't want to find that clip. That takes more work than I want to put into this episode. But you have the center back situation, and you have even still some question marks, some unclarity about Ozan Kabak. Almost like we felt pretty sure he wasn't coming back, and then like no one's really said much of it. But anyway, you look at the rest of the center backs beyond Van Dijk. Alex, who do you see as keepers, and who do you see as guys that we could or should go ahead and maybe make a move away from?
I think you sell Konate immediately. You pull a Martin Demichelis, who I think, if I remember, I can't remember all of the teams that were involved, but I think he went from like Malaga to Atletico Madrid, never played, and then like 4 weeks later moved to Man City because that's where Pellegrini, who was at Malaga, ended up. So
wow.
It's possible, because FIFA rules say you can't play for 3 teams in one calendar year, but you didn't say anything about being on them.
Right, exactly.
So yeah, hilarious. Do that with him. But no, I think he is, as long as he's fit when the season starts, and I mean, he was fit. He played in the U21s. Mm-hmm. He's ready. Like, I think he will be the one to partner whoever is the most fit out of the 3 that have been injured.
Sure.
When the season rolls around next, I mean, I don't really see us selling anybody. Honestly, I don't necessarily want to. The only one I would maybe consider selling is Nat Phillips, which I know we said he's like unsellable. I want to keep him, but if he realizes that, wow, I just played most of the season for the defending champs and did pretty well, and some team can come along and offer me an entire season's worth of games, whereas I'm going to be probably 5th choice center back here at Liverpool, even though I love it, I want to play, I would not begrudge him that move. It would make total sense, but also willing to keep him around, because I know that we don't know what Virgil van Dijk, Joe Gomez, and Joel Matip are going to be like after these really serious injuries. We don't know if they're going to be prone to injury. 2 of them already were pretty prone to injury, so it's worth having all of them around. I think Ben Davies will get more looks as long as he's a real person, which I'm not fully convinced about. And I mean, he's reportedly been hearing like a calf injury since he signed, which makes total sense because he's a center back that plays for Liverpool. Sure. So it'll be interesting to see how he factors in, but that seems like a pretty solid run of center backs. Apart from that, it's just like, let's get loan deals for Reece Williams and Billy Comedio, who seem like the 2 youth center backs, but they shouldn't be playing for us this season.
Right, exactly. There's no reason to rely on them anymore. There's no reason to have to deal with, the stress of, oh, here's a Nat Phillips and Reese Williams center back pairing again. Woohoo! Who knows what's going to happen next? I agree with you about Nat, and I do hate it because he ended up being such a dynamic aerial stopper last year. Like, not just like a serviceable center back, but like he had like an elite skill that he demonstrated that would make him very useful for other teams. And I think that's exactly it. I think that we can do him a favor by getting him a chance to play first team for insert small or insert, bottom mid-table team here. Like, he could probably go and suit up for just about any smaller English team. He just could. And probably still be, a Premier League starting center back on one of those smaller clubs who could use someone right now. So yeah, I agree. I'd almost say we float him out there to some of those teams, just because he did just have value. I would argue in favor of maybe trying to offload either Gomez or Matip. I've always liked Joe Gomez more if I had to pick between the two. But at the same time, I also know how much Joel Matip has, he's been a good, locker room presence. He seems to be one of those guys that they really like as well in the locker room. But he also, I just know he brings a little bit different something to a center back pairing, especially with, Virgil. So I don't know. I'm kind of torn on that. But it would be very hard to move either of those guys who have not played in a while, and that's the issue we have here is that I could see a reason to move one of them so that there's A, less of a logjam at center back, and B, get just a little bit more cash flow in that could be turned into a Genie replacement in midfield or a true number 9, whatever it is that we view as important. But at the same time, it's going to be hard, so it's almost not worth it trying to float it out there and force the issue. Give them some play time when they're healthy. Let them prove they're still worthwhile. I don't know, maybe send one of them away in January. We don't do that as a club, but it's just it's a possibility. So I could see one of their futures within the next 12 months being that they leave Liverpool, but for now I just don't see how it's feasible. So I don't think there's any disagreements there. I do think you're right. I do think that we'll see Ben Davies more, and I would honestly kind of get this feeling that Ben Davies might be the 2021 to 22 Nat Phillips. He shows up and he just does something that he shouldn't be able to do, and he becomes kind of a cult hero because he's actually doing pretty well,
Yeah.
So I could definitely see that sort of situation happen. So it's hard to really say anything about who we could get rid of in this group. As far as specifically the center backs go, it seems like it's definitely there's no real reason to. So maybe we let it linger a little bit. We let everyone get healthy, and then we maybe see who we can maybe trim down a little bit if we're making moves to bring in, guys like Konate. What do you think about Ozan Kabak? Do you think that he was a player that we should have kept, should have bought that picked up that option to purchase at the end of this loan deal, or do you think it's more beneficial to just go ahead and outright get Konate and not worry about anything else?
I think more of the latter. Kabak has definitely been on our radar for a while. We've seen links about him before. This has been someone we've been tracking. We don't go for people unless we have a good reason. So I think there was probably all intentions to make that move permanent, and it would have been a really smart deal. But the fact that we haggled for so long ended up working out in our favor, and we can praise that now because we got third despite all the craziness of last season. But for all intents and purposes, it sounds like what happened was the Konate deal became an option, and we just took it because you have to take it when that type of offer, when that type of deal is possible. And so what that meant was, well, we're not going to buy 2 center backs. We've got too many, and I know all of them are going to get hurt at some point. We'll have to play with midfielders and defense again. But I mean, that's just a lot to keep around, and we probably need to spend the money elsewhere. So I think it's just a bit unfortunate for him that the offer we couldn't refuse came along, and he got hurt for half of his 4 months here at Liverpool.
Yeah.
So he didn't have a chance to really grow into the team, because I have a feeling if he had been able to play week in, week out, had some time to have a regular partner, because you saw kind of with him and Phillips working together, they were getting better and better at playing together. And I think there would have been a lot more fans clamoring for him to stay, because he's a very good player, and I think will become a very, very good center back. So I don't think Schalke will be short of offers for him, and we may even see him back in the league or just further up the Bundesliga. But who knows? I wish him well. Just a bit unlucky for him. But yeah, he's definitely – I think it might have been confirmed that we are not renewing the option. I don't know if it was confirmed by the club, but definitely confirmed by the press.
Okay, yeah. It had basically already been all but confirmed. I just couldn't remember if there was an official word, and I just didn't feel like looking it up. Agreed. It sucks for him because he did have moments of a lot of promise. He had so many moments where you could tell he was totally unsure of who he was matched up with. Like there was so little consistency across like the entire pitch with this, this whole club. There's so little consistency this past season. But there was so little consistency with what like he had to work with. So like, how is he supposed to know how he fits in the team and how he's, supposed to partner up with somebody if he just never really knows who it is or what it's working, who he's working with. And then therefore he can't really get in a consistent headspace in his performances. And eventually it's just like a perfect storm of like, we see he's got talent. We could see that, but like the performances are never quite where they needed to be for various reasons that were always out of his control. And that's kind of like the story of this loan, is that there were so many things that were out of his control. Oh, well. Poor guy. All right. So let's shift focus a little bit over to the left and right back backups. Because we do still have like Nico Williams, and we do still have Kostas Tsimikas around that are big question marks. Kostas being another guy that we're not sure if he does actually exist or not. Nico, a guy that we saw some playing time in, but he's young, and we kind of wonder if he's ready for the challenge. What's your take on those two backup fullbacks that we have picked up? What do you think their futures are?
It's kind of funny that they're similar in a way, in the sense that they're almost unquestioned starters for their national teams, despite not really ever featuring for us unless they absolutely have to. So it's interesting that is the dynamic that we're working with both our backups. I'm probably at this point more excited to potentially see a bit more of Tsimikas, just because he's further along in his career. Been to places, he's played at bigger clubs. I mean, he's played at, sorry, Greek fans, but I believe is the largest club in Greece, in Olympiakos.
Okay, yeah.
Don't want to start any beef with any Panathinaikos supporting Liverpool fans as well. But I think just in terms of titles and size of fans,
there's plenty of them. They're tuning in right now. They're hitting that unsubscribe button. They're getting out of here.
All those Norwegian Panathinaikos fans that we know we have. I mean, he seems to fit the profile of exactly what we're looking for. That's why we signed him that's why we weren't willing to like continue to negotiate for Jamal Lewis. We signed Tsimikas because we're like, for less money, we can get exactly the same thing that we want. And he's a perfect fit for us because he immediately got injured for the entire season with like various injuries. But the good thing going for him is that he very clearly seems to be like everyone's best friend. Like we talked about Adrian being a good locker room presence. It seems like Tsimikas is just like the class clown and everybody loves him. So I'm willing to bet that like when he gets more playing time, he will kind of have the same effect with the fan base. And just the fact that Andy needs a break at some point. He's played every game for every team that exists in the world so far, and he just needs a rest, and we need to be able to work in these people that we've brought in to do that. That's the whole point, reason we bought a left back last summer. It was very clear. I know we've brought it up before, but the coaching staff was like, we can't keep counting on these guys to play 60 games a season because it's just not possible. And so I'm hoping that Tsimikas can stay fit enough. I think the fact that Greece is not in the Euros will be a huge help to him recovering and being an actual part of our plans for the season. So I'm excited to see him. Spend a lot of time on him, but Nico Williams, I think, is in a little bit different stage in his career, despite being in a similar circumstance. I honestly think for him, the best thing would be a loan, because the best situation for a young player like Nico Williams, who Klopp clearly trusts, and from what it seems like, is like he's just going to be the backup right back. There's no question about that. But I think the only way he'll continue to get to the level where we think he'll get is if he plays. And he's probably not going to do that as much with Trent in front of him. I know the hope is to let Andy rest, but Trent will also need a rest. And we don't know if we can fully count on Nico yet because he's still just a kid. So I don't know. I think loaning him would get him the experience that he needs to become a true backup right back.
Exactly. There's only so much that you can learn entirely from a training ground. And, you know, we say he's a kid because he is a kid, but, I mean, he's 20 now. And this is kind of the stage in development in which he has to be playing, and not just training. So you're absolutely right. So far, I mean, I think we're all pretty much in agreement on all the guys that we've seen. Not really any flat out like, we can go ahead and sell these guys right now. A couple of possibility situations, especially in light of like the value that we might get out of a Nat Phillips. But right now it kind of feels like it. Just to recap, out of goalkeepers and the defensive line, no one that you think is a flat out, we can go ahead and sell them. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would say so.
Solid. All right, well, let's jump over to the midfield then. Obviously, we have gaps that need to be filled with Jorginho Wijnaldum now gone. But there's reasons why we went after a player like Thiago last year, and why we're really, really happy that Thiago is healthy again. There's reasons why we're really, really healthy that Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain is healthy again. And he got back in and played, once again a lot as the season went on. We actually saw more Xherdan Shaqiri late in the year, which was a nice, pleasant surprise. So you still have these guys like Ox and Shaq hanging around that are, like the possible, like, seems like they're Klopp's preferred substitutes, and unless they just really felt like they needed to be a consistent first timer, they probably would be in that role for however long they wanted to here with this club. All right, we look at the midfield group, and it's pretty safe. Who would you say is like the untouchables of this group? The ones that's like, no question, we don't have to like talk about it. Do you think there are any in this group? Obviously, like, the team captain is here, and one of our favorite players on the podcast, Fabinho, is in this group. But like, are any of them you feel like totally not even worth like discussing? Yes, absolutely, they're no question keepers.
It's those two, and I would also include Thiago in that mix. And if he wants to stay, which it seems like he does, Milner. Those would be the four that I would say we will not sell, and I don't want us to sell.
So I think it's interesting that you included Milner in there. And I agree with you, especially on Thiago. I know there were a lot of like detractors this past season that we kind of gave a lot of grief to for not quite getting hit, what he brings to the table, because we never saw fully what he brings to the table, And so I think that's one of the major reasons why we have to, no question, keep Thiago, because we have to be able to actually see him play for a full year. But Why Milner as like a no question keeper at this point? Just the veteran presence, the versatility, the leadership, all of that. Let him finish his career here if he wants to, sort of situation.
Yep.
Why do you pick him?
All the above. He's the team dad. He's clearly a popular figure. He's amazing for just morale. He's amazing for the club. He's a great representative of the club. He's a leader on the field, off the field. It's clear that a lot of the younger guys look up to him and are learning a lot from him. So I definitely think he sticks around. Would love for if he does want to stay here, retire here, for him to transition into coaching somehow, to stay involved with the club. He's just, I mean, he has become such a Liverpool just like icon. Just He is a man that is the club at this point. So I don't think we could think about selling him unless needs to make a sentimental move.
There was exactly like if he wanted to spend like one last year, back at Leeds or something,
running more than he does for us at Leeds.
Right, exactly. If he wants to spend one last season in hell, basically. I think it also goes a long way that he seems. Well, he doesn't even seem it. You could tell he's just genuinely happy to be playing for Liverpool. Yeah. And it's not something that you ever felt like, was the case at Man City, and it's like, okay, sure. Like, he was like the Man City super sub and everything. And he might have, and he was a more dynamic player, whatever, before he came over, but he seems genuinely happy here and seems like a type of guy who you could count on to become an assistant coach if he were to retire a Red, So yeah, right there with you on that. Totally, yeah, I like that. He would not have been in my list of like no discussion guys, but since you said all of that, I totally see where you're coming from, and I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah, and I think we brought it up last year, but it's worth saying again that it's so rare to see a player at his stage in his career and of that age grow as a player. But since Klopp has come in, he's really found his own anywhere that he's played, but particularly in center mid, because I know when he first came in, when Broad was in charge, he just looked lost. He didn't really look like he understood what that role was. But since coming in and learning under Klopp, he is so clearly a center mid to the point where he is like the single season Champions League assist holder from center mid. So like he's just become such a different and like honestly like far more effective within the system and integral since he's joined us.
Yeah. Agreed. Okay. So that leaves some names out there such as Naby Keita, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, Xherdan Shaqiri, Curtis Jones. Depending on if you look on the Liverpool website or if you look on other websites where they're listed, Diogo Jota sometimes is considered a mid. We'll put him in with the forwards in our discussion.
Yeah.
But even players like Ben Woodburn are still around, Who am I overlooking here? On
Grujic would be in that list.
Yeah. We need to talk about Marco Grujic. I don't know where you would put someone like Minamino. We'll put him with forwards, I guess,
Yeah, I'd put him with forwards.
Technically we still have Shea Ojo, who's out. I can't believe that he's still technically like ours, but on loan. Like that doesn't seem accurate to me still.
No.
But he's in that group as well. Speaking of the loaners, we did kind of forget about a couple of loan guys on other positions we'll get to in a minute here. But all right, so those are the guys that we're really talking about. In particular, I think there's a lot to be discussed with. And where do we put Harry Wilson?
I'd put him at forward. I'd put Elliott at forward as well.
Because like on the Liverpool website, Harry Wilson listed as a mid. So it's like. It just some of these younger guys that don't have one clearly defined position make it tricky. So we'll put those guys at forwards, and for the sake of discussion right now, we've got Naby, Curtis, Ox, Shaq, Grujic, Ojo is who we will really focus on. Woodburn is who we'll really focus on in here. What's your take on this gnarly group of players, especially some that I think most fans could have been convinced were already sold.
I mean, I would put Curtis Jones in the unsellable bracket.
Yeah, I think there's just the potential. The potential's way too obvious with that kid right now.
Yeah, and he's a Liverpool kid. He's earning trust. He's bonded with the team. He's had some great, hilarious reactions with Klopp on the sideline. Like, he's a part of the squad now. He's become so much better. He grew into the role and the responsibility of being a first teamer so well. So I think he'll have a big part to play. And I think we'll be able to his kind of health and fitness better this season, because he hopefully will not be playing out of necessity. The other one I'll call out is Naby, because as everyone who listens to this knows, I'm a big Naby supporter. But It's interesting. It's hard to say what we do with him, because you just never know how long he's going to be fit. Every time he seems to be like coming into the team, he gets injured. It's hard to count on him. You would think that Gini leaving would leave an opening for him to step up, because I know we've talked often a lot about he and Gini not really seeming to gel really well if they're playing in the same team. So this will be a big test for him if he can stay fit, if he could step up and be the guy that fills that hole that Gini will be leaving behind. So I would like to keep him, just because I know what he can do. I think we all know what he can do when he can be in full flow and be in the position that he wants to be. But hey, this is kind of his last chance in a sense. Like, if he can't stay fit, then I don't know what we do. Like, he will have him around, but I think he's a larger earner from what I imagine, because we moved heaven and earth to get him on the team. Like, There's clearly something in there that we want to use, but we just haven't seen it happen yet, just because he's always recovering from injury and working his way back up. And the rest, it's kind of sad. I would sell all of them if given the opportunity. I love Ox. I love Shaq. But it's very clear based on the actions of this season. And I know there was a lot of injuries involved, but it's like they may have a little bit more trust, but we're not going to see him very often. And Shaq will probably find a more natural home at a different team. Although I do love the wild card element that he brings. Ox has not been the same player since he's come back from injury and continued to get injured. I think in terms of contributions to the team, when we're looking at players who continually get injured and never really seem to play, and I'm totally biased in this because he's my favorite out of the three, but I would keep Naby out of those and give him the most chance. But we've had more opportunity to see what the other two can offer, and it has been great. But this is the position where I feel like we'll generate the most funds, and we also need to do the most like refreshing.
I get that a lot. But push comes to shove, I would probably go the opposite way as you, out of those three in particular. I would probably go, and I'm just thinking also about like play style wise, like Naby is a little bit more like dynamic, like, I don't know, like dribbler going forward, stuff like that, than what we saw Gini do when he was here as Club Gini. So he could do that as well, but I kind of get the feeling that we might rely more and more on a Fab, Hendo, Thiago midfield as the midfield. And so because of that, I would kind of think, start to rely a little bit more on the potential of, if we're going to have some injury prone guys out there, it probably would be the guys that Klopp already kind of obviously likes and trusts in Ox and Shaq. And then also give Curtis Jones more opportunities. So I'd almost feel more likely to move Keita, because I felt like we'd see these glimpses, but we haven't fully seen it. You're right that like this is his last chance to prove it, to show it. I almost wonder if we're like, hey, we kind of we kind of know what we can get out of Ox and Shaq, even if what we know we're going to get is also a couple of injuries every season. Maybe we trust Curtis Jones to do what Naby would normally do. You know, maybe we do actually finally, I don't know, bring in one of these guys that's lived on loan.
Yeah.
And actually give them more play time and go ahead and try to get some of the return back on the Keita move. That's how I would go. I would see us more likely to sell Naby, keep Ox and Shaq, just because I feel like Klopp kind of knows what he can get out of them and knows that he can also, if he needs to, put them in on the wings instead of Mo and Mane, you know? So that's kind of where I go with that. So I guess in that case, I'm saying keep those two, sell Naby. Officially, that's my official word.
Yeah.
Boom.
And are you saying sell Grujic and Ojo? Because I was also including them in that. I think Grujic has enough suitors, and we can get a decent enough return for him. I mean, whatever we get for him will be way more than what we spent. So he clearly has no future in this team. Ojo, again, we've gone full Chelsea loan system for him. Been on loan for 20 years and never really featured for us, at least not intentionally because we were out of people. But I think we could offload those guys, get some funds.
Though Ojo did have like an FA Cup run or something at some point where I remember a few years ago where like he low-key did really well. And I thought it was the weirdest thing. And I forget what exactly that was that we had to play him in, but yeah. Yes, and it pains me to say it because I'm the biggest Marco Grujic fan on this podcast. Yeah. It just fits the profile of what I really, like in a rangy, tall midfielder. And I think that there's a lot that he can kind of bring to the midfield if we wanted to use what he can do. But you're absolutely right. Like, it just is clear that we don't actually care to play him. We don't actually care to have him here. We've just been looking for the right opportunity to move him. And it seems like if some of the rumors are true, it might be there might be some rumors that pointing towards this being the time to finally do it. So yes, Ojo, I could have sworn was already a permanent member of Rangers. Like, already thought he was there. So yeah, I guess we have to sell them. I hate that for Grujic because I really wanted him to be a Red. I wanted him to already be worked into the lineup, but oh well. We did miss a couple of guys earlier, I mentioned, but Sepp Vandenberg is a center back who is still on the roster. Loris Karius, Camille Grabara, still on the roster. Just have to mention them because we want to go through the full roster here, but all three of those guys, go ahead and sell them. What do you think?
I would loan Vandenberg. He's still young. I mean, he was a highly rated talent out of the Netherlands. So I feel like I'd give him more chance to just continue to play somewhere and grow and see where he turns out. Sell Karius. I think it would just be better for all of us if he just was not part of this club. I think it would just be better for him not to be associated with the team anymore.
Exactly.
And just hope he does well. I mean, he had to come in for a bit for Union Berlin, and he helped them maintain and get into the Conference League, which is huge for them. So I think he's done enough to warrant getting a move at least somewhere. And then Grabara, loan him. I mean, he seems like he could potentially be all right, be a Kelleher type of person. But if someone comes along with 5-10 mil, take it.
Yeah. And he's our backup striker,
Yeah, I forgot about that he had to do that.
So, I mean, I could also see us with making some of the center back moves we've made, gone ahead and just being like, hey, look, we feel better with some of the younger guys maybe we have, and go ahead and I think Sepp Vandenberg's going to get the Marco Grujic treatment is basically what I'm getting at here.
Yeah.
Like, sorry, bud, you're never actually coming back. Okay. All right. We did actually just touch base on them. And now let's get to the surprisingly loaded, when you take into account all the players that are on loan or can fit into the midfield /forward winger category, the forward position here. We've got what has been the long-standing big three of Bobby, Sadio, and Mo. You've got the surprise signing turned into instant impact player in Diogo Jota. We still technically have Divock Origi. And then as mentioned, we have the kind of the tweeners of Ben Woodburn, Harry Wilson, Harvey Elliott. And hey, congrats! Isn't there finally a work permit progress on Taiwo Awoniyi?
Yeah, he finally got it.
So that's great for him. He might actually show up and get like a preseason run and be the new Divock for all we know. I love that. And Taki Minamino is in this list as well. So this is a surprisingly loaded group when you take into account everyone who's on loan or a tweener as well. At this point in their careers, when we look at the big three, Sadio, Mo, Bobby, is it safe to say that Mo is the only, no question, we have to keep a member of that group? Does Sadio still fit in that group?
Yeah, I think all three of them are still
all three
untouchable.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think we will. I ideally, I guess, based on, and a lot of it depends on the club's actions, but I don't think we will count on Bobby to start as much. Mm-hmm. But all three of them and Jota and Elliott are all untouchable in my opinion.
Okay. Oh, interesting. Yeah, I was going to add Jota into the untouchables after what he demonstrated, but you went ahead and threw in Harvey Elliott as well, just because of how obviously high potential dynamic he is. Is that the reasoning there?
Yeah, I mean, he absolutely tore it up on loan, and granted, it's a different level of competition, but yeah, it's worth giving him the chance to make the step up, be an option from the bench, maybe start a few games. I mean, his chance creation stats and like his goals and assists for his age group were elite. They were like, I cannot remember who was above him, and I think in the championship it was like him and Michael Olise, who were the top two, but then like across Europe, there was like one other person who was ahead of him, and it's like one of the top prospects in all of the sport at this point. So I can't remember exactly who it was, but like the fact that Harvey Elliott was in that company is just enough to say like the loan did exactly what it needed to do and made him like ready for playing with grown men because he's still a child essentially.
Yeah. I like that. I think you're absolutely right. And when you look at anyone who is in this entire roster and stands any chance of being that young and a no question keeper, I mean, he even beats out Curtis Jones, the homegrown lad, in that regard, because you just look at him and you're like, oh, well, if you had to choose between the two, sure, Curtis has more like actual in-game experience right now. But Harvey looks like he could be an absolute superstar, and we have to be able to keep him around to take advantage of that. Not saying that I would ever want to choose between the two of them. That's just, I'm trying to paint like a hypothetical situation here. So, all right, so you still think that Bobby is an untouchable, no question, keeper. I don't know if I'd go that far with him at this point in his career to be like it's a no question. I think if there was maybe the off chance that somebody would pay a solid amount of money, we'd consider doing it. I'm not saying that I want it to happen. I'm just saying it for the sake of this keep or sell type of episode. I would definitely consider it much more than I ever would have in the past. But what I would consider more than anything else, more than getting rid of him, is just allowing him to actually play a little bit more of his like a quote unquote original attacking mid sort of role, and not trusting him to even be like a forward, and almost doing like an up top diamond. And having someone who is a true forward and him sitting back in the midfield, sitting in front of a Fab and Thiago setup or something like that. I think that could be a lot of fun. It's not what Klopp would ever do with the formation probably, but I think that could be beneficial. And Sadio, I'd still keep up there just because I know this was the worst career or year he's had in his career, but that doesn't mean it's indicative of where he stands as a player. It just means he had a bad season, and it still was a pretty good season, all things considered. It wasn't that terrible. So that leaves us with a lot of the other guys then, who are bench players, role players, remnants of bygone eras like Divock. What do we do with Divock? I don't know if you mentioned Harry Wilson or not yet, but that kind of group of players that we don't really know much of anything about yet, or the guys like Taki who just showed up but quickly were loaned back out. What do we do with the rest of the remnants there, Alex? What's your take on that?
Before I get into that, I looked it up,
Okay.
and the only player, I think it was U21, the only player with as many chances created, like big chances created, as Harvey Elliott, they were equal, is Jadon Sancho. And I'm not saying they're like the exact same player or they're on the same levels or anything, but like that, just looking at his quality and playing in a way worse team. I know Sancho missed a lot of the season as well, but that's good company to be in. And that doesn't really just happen. That's not really like a statistical anomaly. That's just how he plays. So again, like just worth keeping, and the type of approach he takes to that position. Definitely think he's all right.
That's a great statistic to point out. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Appreciate you doing the research, man.
Well, forgetting to do the research and then being able to quickly find it. But that counts. For the rest of this, I maybe give, it kind of seems like we want to give Taki a chance, like, because we didn't put in the obligation to buy or an option to buy on his loan. It seems like we realized that the only way he's going to get better is by playing. So let's give him a chance to play and see if he can come in. He's not going to be the guy who replaces Bobby in the lineup, in my opinion. He's going to be an option, so that we'll have multiple options. Out of all the people that we have up there that we haven't talked about yet, the rest I think we should be looking to sell. I mean, Origi, I think it's kind of been presented clearly. I mean, he's a legend as well for the goal scoring contributions in the Champions League season, but he could go somewhere else and play. He's good enough to be doing that somewhere else. Ben Woodburn, it's just not working out for him. I think he's been injured. I think there was too much expectation put on him too young. So let's just get him a chance to like a fresh start. Harry Wilson, clearly not part of the plans, but with his performances the past few seasons on loan, could definitely get us some money. So this is another position where I feel like we could use the fringe players. Oh, and Taiwo got that work permit. That helps a lot. Sales, another player that but scored some valuable goals for Union as well, to get them into the Conference League. We really deserve to be in the Conference League and the Champions League as well, based on the performances of Karius and Taiwo. So, I think for Conference League, no, that's not true. But so the rest of these guys, let's sell them. Let's get some money. Let's fill out the rest of the squad with players that we need and we will trust and we will actually use. Because that's one thing that we just didn't really see up top, especially one with injury, two with trust, is that like we need people that we will actually play.
That's out of that group. I remember saying it last year, and I kind of will, emphasize it a little bit again here, that I really would love to see us do more with Harry Wilson, just because of his tendency and penchant for taking and making long-range shots. He brings a dynamic that we don't have in our standard rotation outside of maybe Ox. Ox is like the only player that will attempt that sort of thing. And it's nice to stretch a defense out a little bit more. But that being said, like, that's obviously not a priority for us. And at this point, he shows that he can do that on a level for a smaller club. Something that we could see. I would love to see him and Nat Phillips tear it up for some, mid-table Premier League team next year. That would be great. So yeah, I'm with you on that. The only thing I would say is, like, maybe since he finally has the work permit and he's had so many like Bundesliga loan spells and everything, if we finally do move Divock away, why not give Taiwo Awoniyi a chance as just a backup like traditional striker. Like we will have a need for that position. We have a need for a starter in that position. We talked about it'd be nice to get a fresh face as a true striker like that. But even if we just kept with someone in that quote unquote Divock role of like the backup, who's a true striker and changes the pace of things, let's just see what he's got. Let's see what Taiwo's got. I don't expect him to ever be like a big time player for us, but like he finally got the work permit. Let's reward his diligence and say, hey, yeah, come on and at least get a full season in as like a backup striker for us. I'd love to see that. Otherwise, yes, agree with you on the other guys that we've talked about so far, and I'm very curious to see what we can finally get out of that Taki deal. Very curious to see him actually fully, now that he's, because I do think it was very big and very important and very understated that he was able to get a Premier League loan.
Mm-hmm.
Because it meant that he was able to get consistent top flight first team football. And that was the one thing we couldn't promise him, but it wouldn't have benefited him at all to not have that. Now that he's had that sum, he was forced to adapt faster, and we can find, because you saw when he came in for us some indecisiveness, some uncertainty, trying to figure out like the Premier League style a little bit. Now he's got that more experience. Now we can bring him in and actually use him in the roles that we intended to use him for, which I think would be great. So, yeah, I'm excited to see what he can actually bring in a fresh season. But in order for that to happen, there has to be a little bit of probably shuffling or trimming of the roster, which does mean that chances are he would have to take the place of a Ox or Shaqiri in terms of like how Klopp likes to use them as wing replacements every now and then, which is actually what he was doing when he came in anyway. So that's not that big a deal. But yeah, not really any major disagreements with you in that regard. But I would actually like to see a definite move for Divock, a definite move for Woodburn, yes, definite move for Harry Wilson. That's who it was. But I would actually like to try to keep Taiwo just to have him, just to actually try to see what he has. I don't know. We know nothing about him. He's the one guy in particular out of that entire group we literally know nothing about, basically, as a club. We don't know how he might fit with the team style. We don't know how he might get along with people. He's just kind of been hanging out in Germany for a few years.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, he joined the club in 2015. This has been 6 years of all of this. Man, that's crazy. Give him a year. Give him a year on the actual club. He deserves it at this point. All right. Have we overlooked anybody in particular?
I don't think so. I mean, I think we've covered all the big stuff. Yeah. I think cumulatively with our sell options, we should have generated some funds.
Yes. Yeah. So, they're the only names that are on like a list that we would not have talked about were guys like Leighton Clarkson and Jake Kane.
Yeah, and honestly, a loan for them would be good. And one other name, I guess I want to bring up, or two other names, I guess I want to bring up because they were crushing it for the youth teams. One is Leighton Stewart, a striker. He tore his ACL. I don't know when he'll be back. Well, it seems to happen.
He was crushing it too hard, apparently.
Yeah, he crushed way too hard, blew up his leg. But if he gets fit, I'm sure he'll have probably another year with the youth team. But he would be one I'd look to loan, maybe a Harvey Elliott style loan to a championship club, or maybe even like a League One club, just to get him some experience playing with like adults rather than kids. And then another one is Mateusz Musilowski, who kind of blew up and came into the consciousness of the Liverpool fandom over kind of the second half of the season, just because he scored so many ridiculous goals for the youth team. And he's just, he looks like a special talent, and the way to nurture that, I think, would to be maybe not to like fast track him and throw him in somewhere, like into a top flight and just be like, here, deal with it. But maybe get him alone where he is playing again, like in an adult league against adults at a top level where it's just so much faster. Get him used to the speed of that level as quickly as possible so that he could become a viable first team option for us quickly. Because there's something about that kid that he could be the next kind of like one to make it through the academy into the first team.
Wow. Okay. It's high praise. It's high praise. Respect that. All right. Yeah. So we've kind of made it through all the more notable names and some of the guys that might not have gotten mentioned. Like we kind of said, like a Leighton Clarkson, a Jake Kane, you know, these 19-year-olds we don't know much about. There's no real discussion to be had. They may show up, they may get a loan, they may not factor in at all this entire next year. You know, we'll just have to wait and see. But all that being said, let me propose a hypothetical to you now. We've at least had in the three major defense, midfield, forward, we've had at least a couple of names we brought up as we can move these players, or we should move these players in our opinions, which would free up a few funds to maybe make a move, because this is FSG and we're not making multiple moves. We're bringing a player in. What position do we bring it in for? What position do we fill with the funding that you and I just cleared up for the team? And let's say that we got some decent deals and it's enough to make a reasonable, you know, non Mbappe or Haaland offer. What do you think?
I think that there's two positions that I would consider, and I'm going to go with one of them, and I'm curious to see your answer if it is the other one. But I would go for a modern striker. I don't want to say like an out-and-out number 9, because that is not really that common anymore at the top level. Like the best teams have basically Bobby-type strikers who are more striker-minded than midfield-minded. Since Bobby's a little bit more midfield-minded, he is more that he leans more towards false 9 tendencies than like actual 9 tendencies. Whereas there's a lot of strikers out there that are that, but more natural strikers, more fox in the box element to their game.
Right.
Better, like natural finishers, will score goals, will also put the work in, will also lead the press, will also be an integral part of the defensive shape, as well as making sure they're where they need to be to score goals first and foremost. So I think that would be the area that I went for first and foremost, because we addressed the center back issue that would have been on the list as well. But now I think, given what we've said about Bobby, given that we've mentioned that we might not want to be using him as much as we did before, because he's done so much and worked so hard, and might just need a little bit of a break and just maybe an evolution in his position in this team. I mean, he might even drop into the midfield, who knows? But yeah, striker would be the place to start for me.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with you. That's what I was thinking as well. And that's why I think that we just need, as much as it was huge to have Diogo Jota come in and do what he did, we could really see. And this is where the trouble is, because like I don't know of any like starters that we would really need to replace, you know, but we would need, outside of like maybe the Bobby Firmino spot that we kind of discussed about already. You know, that's the one spot I could think of. It's like, yeah, we could really honestly replace him. Midfield, we might get some different depth or different rotation type of players going, but I wouldn't say we have any of those guys in the midfield that we would need to replace, you know? Because like if Genie's gone, there's other guys, and if we just keep all the midfielders we have, then like best case scenario, we've got a season where Naby Keita stays healthy and shows why he was brought in to begin with. So I just feel like we saw enough out of last year to know that there has to be more in the forward position and more rotation in the forward position, because even Mo having a good year, he was gassed at times. So I'm with you on that. We have to have another modern forward, and that doesn't have to break the bank, because like another guy who's on a Diogo Jota-esque level of like value, solid. I mean, what was that deal for Jota? It was not an
I think it was
overwhelming amount of
45
money.
mil, which is like par for the course
Yeah,
for the modern game.
yeah, for any modern forward, really, especially. So yeah, so I mean, I could see another move like that for a more central striker esque player be the move as well. So no, I wouldn't disagree with you. I just look at the team and I would say center back if we hadn't already been making moves in that area. Like I would say that because of injuries, except we already have started making those moves. So like now it's uncharted territory, and that uncharted territory is, hey, let's actually. We brought in an established midfielder in Thiago last year. Let's go get an established forward. Why not? Let's do something crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. The other position, because you brought it up, you did bring it up, although I think I might think it is more of a priority than you do, is a center midfielder. I think we just lost someone who was a nailed on starter, and we have
that's true.
potentially 1 to 2. Yeah, my internet just dropped for a
I
second.
was gonna say you were gone. Oh man! All right, feel free to start that whole thought over again, I guess.
Yeah, and so you did bring it up, the other position that I was thinking about, but I might view it a little more as a high priority than it seems like you might. Is center mid. I think it's something that we'll need to look into because we just lost someone who was a nailed on starter for us. And we have 1 to 2 people that we might have waiting in wings to potentially fill that role. But one thing that we saw this season that we didn't see last season, that's the weirdest way to put it, is that this season our midfield as a whole was a lot more tentative about getting into the box, getting involved in the attack, and becoming one with the forward line and like transitioning out of the middle third into the attacking third. You saw it more with Henderson than probably any of the other midfielders, just because of the way that he plays, because you see kind of Thiago pulling the strings from a little bit deeper. But when we did score some very important goals, it was when he went into the box. But again, his better role and what he's more accustomed to is playing from deeper. But I think this team could absolutely benefit from a more penetrative midfielder, someone who's going to carry the ball, someone who's going to get involved, make the late runs. I mean, you see how much we cross. You see those options being available. You see how, like, keeping teams on their toes with someone who, is he going to shoot? Is he going to pass? Is he going to come at me? Is he going to play out wide? We don't want to get sucked into the repetition and playing into the same patterns over and over again, because when we became more varied, that's how we went on that late season run. So I feel like getting someone in who could be maybe a bit more attacking, honestly, like a Henderson of the left side of the three would be immense. There's not that many players that can do that, but there are players that could fit the profile of someone who would become an aggressive midfielder for us while also being able to cover all that space. So I think that would be probably the second priority from what we have for the rest of the summer. So like sell all the people and get a striker and get like attacking 8 type of midfielder, and then we're set.
Yeah, I totally get that. I totally get what you're coming from. I will say that if I had to go with like a second need, though, I wouldn't mind getting just an okay. I wouldn't mind getting a right back Tsimikas. That's like, just someone who's not an up and coming youngster. Like Tsimikas is like mid-20s, so he's still young, but obviously he's not like a 17-year-old prospect. Get someone like that plays on the right, that we can rotate Trent more often and not run him ragged. If we're talking about like how badly Andy needs a rest every now and then, like, you know, Trent's in the same boat. He just happens to not have as much mileage on his legs quite yet. And so let's avoid that situation.
Yeah.
If we can. I think that is something that we need to get. So that would allow us to be able to get Nico a good loan and just like get us go out and loan an established right back for the year. You know, grab someone on a loan just, you know, to take him off someone else's books, do him a favor, and give us a chance to have a little bit more cover there. That's a need area, I would think, when I look at things, but maybe more so than when I look at the center mids in that regard. I know that's different, but I think that also shows what good condition we're in as a club.
Yeah.
That's one of that we don't look at it instantly go, oh, we badly need a first choice keeper.
Yeah.
Oh, we badly need another first choice center back. Like, you know, we're doing so much better now. We've been making some good business deals. I think what we really need actually this summer is to put together and organize another Super League.
Yeah.
That's actually what we need to really maximize profits.
Yeah. We're all for it. That's it. What went wrong the first time is that it just wasn't evil enough.
Yeah.
So I think let's try to get a little more terrible.
Like, it was a big deal, but it wasn't too big to fail level yet. We need a too big to fail sort of idea, you know?
Yeah.
We good, I think?
I think that's it.
Okay.
I don't know if we want to say something about Erickson. But it's been a while, but might be nice just to say.
Yeah. Yep. Ooh, man. The keep or sell episode is always a lengthy one, but it's honestly one of my favorites to do because like it appeals to that part of me that is like that loves playing Football Manager or loves playing, you know, any sports game. I much prefer like the management to the actual playing of the matches when I do these sort of things. And speaking of sports games, I love that we just had the most FIFA-esque season we could have had, and by that I mean all of our center backs got hurt all the time.
Yeah.
That is like the one thing FIFA always does, is like you have to have a million center backs because your center backs will get hurt every other week.
Yeah.
So weird. But anyway, so it's always a good episode. I always appreciate the chance to do this and wrap things up. So we will be wrapping things up here, and that's going to wrap up this season of the podcast for us. Man, was this our 5th or 6th season of You'll Never Talk Alone?
I feel like it was the 6th, maybe.
I think it was. I need to do a better job of remembering these things. Man, that's crazy. But we've made it this far, and it's good to be at this point and to hit some of the milestones we've hit in terms of downloads and listens over this past season. We hit some some good numbers, which is always nice, but more importantly, we've had some good fan interactions at times, and we've had some good tweets from all of you, and we just appreciate you tuning in and listening wherever you are and whenever you tune in. So do hope you have a great summer, dear listener, as we move forward. And before we do officially close this season down and finish this episode, obviously, like, it goes without saying that our hearts, our every ounce of our care, every ounce of our compassion, our thoughts and prayers, as you know, the cliche may go, but it's true. Every ounce of goodwill that we could possibly wish upon Christian Eriksen, we send to him and to his family and what had to have been it's difficult for me still. I mean, I started getting choked up all of a sudden and just trying to get through that, watching that moment live, was jarring, not just because of the situation of it there, but because this was a guy that we had really come to appreciate as a player during his time in the Premier League, a guy that we had wished had come to Liverpool instead of Tottenham years previous and all. And a respected person and footballer who went through this, and we had to, we had to see the anguish on the faces of his wife, his teammates, and everyone involved. And so obviously we wish him a full recovery, wish him the best, but also wish the best to his loved ones and his teammates and his coach, for even just having to continue. I can't imagine it. I just can't, but I know it's a harrowing situation, and it affected us thousands and thousands of miles away. Can't imagine how it affected them,
Yeah. I mean, it still really is like, it's hard to process what unfolded. It all just happened so quickly, and it became very apparent how serious it was. And again, to reiterate what we said, our thoughts, prayers, best wishes, everything that we could possibly send to him to recover and to just get back to normal life, is we're doing that. And like everything for his teammates, like you could see how visibly shaken they were when they had to come out and warm up for the second half. Like Simon Kjaer couldn't even finish the game. Like he was just so rattled. And also credit to him. Like he saved Eriksen's life with his quick thinking and action.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people have talked about it. And honestly, the best episode of anyone discussing it that I've heard is the Guardian Football Weekly's episode about it. But one thing they touch on is that like trying to process why we feel so much pain and so much worry for someone that we don't know. But I think you look at how much we've watched him over the years, how much, like honestly, over lockdown, like how integral he has been to our mental health and happiness, just watching him play, him being a part of the sport. And it's incredibly difficult to watch something like that happen to someone that like you don't know, but you clearly care about. So again, best wishes to him, and hopefully he'll be back on his feet in no time.
Absolutely. So thankful to hear that. I mean, it had me shaken up for the rest of the day. Like I was actually physically shaking during the whole thing, just being like, this can't be a real situation we're watching.
Yeah.
And the whole rest of the day, I mean, I was still rattled. It was all I could think about. And at the same time, just so thankful that it was not a dire ending,
Yeah.
So thankful that we got to hear official word and we got to see the pictures of him awake and conscious and I mean, okay, all things considered. That's just it's wild, and so thankful for that. So we couldn't let this whole season, of the podcast wrap up without saying that this means so much more than the sport. Human life means so much more than the sport. I think, God, I mean, the last year and everything that has gone on in sports around the world has really shown how true that is, that these things mean so much more than the matches played on Saturday morning or Sunday morning or whenever it is. These are the realest moments, and so glad that this is one that we are not having to weep over, but this is one that we get to celebrate the heroes who saved him, the medical staff, his teammates who rallied to him, and we get to enjoy the fact that he's still alive today. Just a monumental outcome for what it could have been so much worse. So yeah, man, it just it made you hug your loved ones a little bit tighter, that sort of thing, for sure. So, all right. Well, we do want to thank you once again for tuning in this episode. Thank you, Alex, for jumping in here and discussing the roster with me. Always a big fan of these moments.
Yeah, I can see why you decided to keep me in your early keep and sell.
Well, yeah, it's so I could just piggyback off of all your answers. I could just steal every single thought that you had on you know. I'd have to change anything. It was I got to sit behind you in class and copy your test.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay, all right, cool. No, we do appreciate it, and I once again thank you for tuning in this whole season. It has been a weird one. It has been a at times difficult one to deal with as a Liverpool fan, but we made it through, and now we get a little bit of a summer break. Sit back, see what happens, see who we bring in or don't bring in, and reconvene soon enough with more content and more discussion to be had here on You'll Never Talk Alone. Thanks for joining us. For Alex and on behalf of Zach Osborne, Will Caves, and regrettably Andrew Ainsworth, who I will not send it over to, I'm letting the joke go here at the end of this season.
We
I'm
sold
Joseph
it.
Craven. It's got. We sold that joke. That was the ultimate move. Keep or sell. We're selling the Andrew sign-off joke. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time on YNTA.